You want to keep telling me to come down while we're building? I don't have time for that. But here's my breaking point on that. Come after me, call me names, I don't care. Call me what you want, go down that rabbit hole, whatever. But when you go after my family, my Turning Point USA family, my Charlie Kirk Show family, when you go after the people that I love, and you're making hundreds and thousands of dollars every single episode going after the people that I love because somehow they're in on this, no.
Stop scrolling, because this story is the political internet's version of dropping a lit match into a room full of gasoline, and then arguing in the comments about who technically bought the gas. Charlie Kirk was killed on September 10th, 2025, and Tyler Robinson has been charged, with prosecutors signaling this could become a death penalty case. So yes, this is real life, not a Netflix pitch meeting, and because it's real life, the stakes aren't tea. The stakes are nuclear. Now, before we go any further, a lot of what's flying around online right now is claim, counterclaim, and vibes wearing a trench coat. I'm going to talk about what's being alleged, what's being implied, and why the internet is reacting the way it is, without pretending rumors are courtroom facts. Alright, strap in. Candace Owens isn't treating this like a normal tragedy. Candace Owens is treating this like a crime board with red string, 3 espresso shots, and a don't lie to me button, and the core angle that's got people glued isn't who pulled the trigger, it's the story Candace keeps circling. Power, control, and who becomes the face of the machine after the face is gone. And the moment you say power, the next thing everyone starts sniffing for is the speed of the takeover. When Erika Kirk stepped into a high visibility leadership role quickly, the internet didn't treat it like a normal organizational decision. It treated it like a season premiere, because once you become the public face, you don't get to live in the just a grieving widow lane anymore. You're now in the CEO with a microphone lane, where every pause, every sentence, every blink becomes a headline. The framing that catches fire online is simple. If you accept the crown, you inherit the questions. You can't stand at the podium, hold the legacy like it's a brand asset, and then act surprised that people start asking, okay, who's steering this ship now and where are we going? And to be fair, that's not even conspiracy thinking. That's basic human logic. Leaders don't get graded on vibes alone. They get graded on decisions. And the fast transition is exactly what triggers the vibe auditors, because most people expect a tragedy to come with a slow, cautious shuffle, interim leadership, internal stability, quieter public cadence. When the handoff looks immediate, some supporters read it as strength, but critics read it as a rollout, like grief got scheduled on Google Calendar with color-coded PR blocks. And here's why this detail sticks. The internet doesn't know how to process complex grief plus leadership responsibility without turning it into a meme. So the moment Erika's role becomes public-facing, everything becomes symbolic. A packed schedule becomes control, a confident delivery becomes rehearsed, and any attempt to draw boundaries becomes dodging. It's not that people automatically believe something sinister, it's that speed creates suspicion in a world trained to distrust institutions and branding. The louder the spotlight gets, the less room there is for nuance, and the more people start narrating your choices like they're reading stage directions. Enter CEO, cue applause, cue outrage, cue conspiracy thread. That's why Candace's argument lands with audiences. It's not I solved the case, it's you can't take the steering wheel and then refuse to answer why the car keeps swerving. Whether you think that's fair or not, that's the reality of public leadership in 2025. Once the clock starts, the internet doesn't watch time, it watches behavior, and it judges like it's paid per opinion. And once the public clock starts, the internet doesn't watch time, it watches behavior. Picture the scene. Candace is getting framed as peddling conspiracies, the cameras are rolling, the vibe is tense, and Erika drops a one-word response: stop. Now, in normal human society, that means, please stop, this hurts, I'm tired, I'm grieving, I'm not doing this today. But online heard stop the way a cat hears a can opener. Suddenly everybody's wide awake like, oh, we said the magic word? We're in the restricted section of the library now? And that's the problem. The internet doesn't do translation, it does trial. It doesn't ask what the word means, it immediately asks what the word is preventing. So stop doesn't land like a boundary, it lands like a vault door shutting. Not because it proves anything, but because the internet treats tone like evidence evidence and emotion like confession. One syllable turns into 1,000 threads. Why that word? Why now? Why so sharp? Meanwhile, the only real crime might be that humans don't speak in perfect PR paragraphs when they're under pressure. Shocking, I know. And once that stop hits, the whole conversation mutates. It stops being what happened and becomes who's allowed to question. Candace gets painted as the loud instigator. Erika gets painted as the wounded guardian, and suddenly the audience is arguing about morals instead of timelines. The funniest part is that telling people to stop is like throwing gasoline on curiosity, because nothing makes the internet dig harder than being told to stop digging. It's like yelling, "Don't look in the closet" in a horror movie and expecting the audience to calmly sip tea. So the word becomes a personality test. Supporters hear protection, critics hear control, and the internet, being the internet, will always choose the spiciest interpretation because it's addicted to plot twists. That's how you get from one word to an entire narrative universe where everyone is either a saint, a grifter, or a Marvel villain with a media strategy team. And once stop hits the timeline, people don't calm down. People start asking why the conversation keeps getting redirected. Here's how it plays out in real time. Candace's supporters aren't just arguing about the details. They're arguing about the audacity of asking. In the narrative you shared, the second Candace presses, the spotlight does that sneaky little magic trick where it slides off the big question, what happened to Charlie? And lands squarely on, why won't Candace shut up? And suddenly the conversation isn't about timelines, it's about tone. It's not about contradictions, it's about vibes. Candace stops being a person raising questions and becomes the annoying car alarm of the internet, loud, inconvenient, and somehow the bigger issue than the break-in itself. And once people accept that framing, you can watch the crowd start policing the messenger like it's a full-time job. It's disrespectful, it's harmful, move on, which sounds noble right up until you realize move on is sometimes just a polite way of saying stop looking under the rug. And that's where the morality play shows up. Good people trademark move on, bad people trademark keep digging, like we're all living inside a Disney remake called The Curious Villain. It's the oldest PR spell in the book. If you can make the questioner look like the problem, then nobody has to answer the questions. It's like a restaurant getting a health inspection and responding by reviewing the inspector's personality instead of cleaning the kitchen. We're not here to talk about the roaches. Why is this inspector so negative? That's the trick. Shift the argument from is this true to is it appropriate to ask? And the whole controversy turns into etiquette class instead of accountability. Meanwhile, the audience watching from home is like, wait, if everything is so obvious, why are we treating curiosity like a felony? Because confident truths don't need security guards. Fragile narratives do. And right when you'd expect a public showdown, the story does the one thing that makes everyone even more suspicious. It goes behind closed doors. The private meeting is the part where the internet stops watching like a viewer and starts watching like a parole officer. 1 minute, everything is public chaos. Accusations flying, responses dropping, audiences picking sides like it's a playoff game. And then suddenly it's, we're meeting privately on December 15th and public discussion is on hold. And in normal human language, that can mean, let's talk this out and stop feeding the algorithm. But in internet language, it means, ah yes, the conference room episode. Because the moment you take a story that was screaming in public and move it behind closed doors, people assume one of two things is happening. Somebody's negotiating terms, or somebody's editing the script. It's like watching a reality show where they cut to commercial right when someone says, I have something to tell you, and then you come back and everyone's pretending nothing happened. That's not calming, that's suspicious seasoning. And here's the funniest part. A private meeting doesn't even have to be shady to feel shady online. The internet doesn't do nuance. It does narrative hunger. If there's no footage, people fill the silence with fan fiction. If there's no transcript, people write their own. If there's a pause, people assume it's not peace, it's strategy. Because private meetings create the one thing the internet can't stand, a gap in the timeline. And once there's a gap, everything becomes wait. Why now? Why the hold? Why the timing? Why the sudden hush? It starts sounding less like two people trying to resolve conflict and more like everybody stop talking while we reorganize Americanize the story. Maybe it's innocent, maybe it's wise, but online, the only thing worse than drama is drama that disappears into a locked room and comes back with a press-friendly smile. And once it's private, the internet instantly asks the messiest question of all: what's being protected? This is where the story hits the big red button and the internet goes from side-eyeing optics to running a full moral trial in the comment section. Because debating speeches and interviews is one thing. It's like arguing about who's winning a messy group chat. But the moment the narrative pivots to the kids, the vibe changes instantly. Suddenly it's not, was that a good look? It's, what kind of person does that? And in the competitor-style framing you shared, the allegations escalate into a much heavier lane. Claims that Erika is less present, that caretakers, nannies are doing more of the day-to-day, and that the children are emotionally sidelined while public visibility ramps up. Again, presented as allegations, not proven fact. But the internet hears kids and loses all ability to act normal, because people don't just react to kid-related claims, they imprint on them. Everybody becomes a parenting expert, a grief counselor, and a courtroom judge, all while typing with one hand and microwaving leftovers with the other. And that's exactly why it spreads. It's the algorithm's favorite recipe: tragedy plus power plus children plus public spotlight. The internet doesn't debate that combo, it adopts it. A packed schedule becomes avoidance, a calm tone becomes coldness, a polished answer becomes scripted, even trying to ignore it becomes hiding. It turns into a vibe audit economy where feelings are treated like forensic evidence, and the comment section starts acting like it has subpoena power. And once the narrative is framed as this is about the kids, it becomes nuclear because it makes the critic look like a protector and makes the target look like a defendant, even when nothing has been proven. That's the whole mechanism. The story stops being about what's verified and starts being about what's emotionally believable. And online, emotionally believable is basically the national currency. And when the internet starts judging parenting, it immediately latches onto one quote and never lets go. The blueberry budget line lands like a cartoon banana peel in the middle of a funeral scene, and the internet immediately starts slow clapping like, oh, we're doing this now. Because a child asks the most heartbreaking question possible: where is dad? And the response, as quoted in the narrative, tries to turn cosmic grief into kid language using humor and familiarity. But the sentence accidentally drags money into the room, and money is the one thing that never behaves itself online. Some people hear it as gallows humor, a stressed adult trying to soften an impossible moment, like putting a band-aid on a broken bone and calling it self-care. Other people hear it as emotional whiplash. Why is a grieving child being taught to associate dad's absence with cost and budget? Like the kid just got promoted to tiny accountant of tragedy. And then the internet does what it always does. It doesn't ask, could this be clumsy and misunderstood? It asks, can we build a whole narrative out of this? And immediately answers itself, yes, obviously. Because one sentence becomes a symbol, and symbols are easier to share than context. Suddenly, blueberry budget isn't a weird line. It's a meme, a moral case study, a character indictment, and a think piece with 40K likes. People start stapling it to everything else. The public schedule, the leadership optics, the stop moment, the private meetings. Like they're building a cinematic universe called the Grief Multiverse, Budget Edition. And that's why it goes nuclear. Not because the internet is good at truth, but because the internet is elite at turning a single messy moment into a full-blown storyline. And yeah, with villains, motives, and a fruit-themed subtitle. And once that narrative forms, the next thing everybody follows is the travel and visibility. The grief tour critique isn't just about doing interviews, it's about the tempo. People watch the appearances stack up and go, wait, are we mourning or are we launching a new season? Because the public expects grief to look like quiet, like the world stops spinning for a minute. But what they're seeing in the way critics frame it is momentum, speeches, cameras, podcasts, events. The whole we're back in business vibe. Candace's angle as it's presented is that this doesn't read like a woman collapsing under loss. It reads like a woman stepping into position with the speed of someone who already knew where the key cards were. And whether that's fair or not, the internet doesn't evaluate fairness. It evaluates vibes and timelines like it's doing a forensic audit on someone's Google Calendar. And the reason this goes nuclear is simple. Nothing triggers online suspicion faster than grief that looks managed. A packed schedule doesn't feel like emotions. It feels like strategy, like PR, like control the narrative before the narrative controls you. Even Even people who believe leadership is necessary still understand the optics problem. You can't ask the public for sympathy while sprinting through a media circuit like it's a championship tour. The internet sees that and reacts the way it always reacts. It doesn't ask, could this be coping? It asks, what are we being sold? Because the internet hates hypocrisy, but it hates a calendar even more. A calendar is premeditation with timestamps, and once viewers believe something is scheduled, they'll assume the story is scheduled too. And that's when every clip turns into evidence, every appearance turns into performance, and every camera angle turns into a motive. And when the calendar fills up, people don't just ask why, they ask the question that always detonates everything: money. The inheritance allegation is the moment the internet grabs a calculator like it's a weapon. The claim gets repeated like a headline. Charlie left a significant amount intended for his children. The narrative throws around a figure around $12 million, and critics allege that money didn't just sit politely in a safe place wearing a tie. It allegedly got upgraded into flights, wardrobe, and media activity. Now, to stay responsible, that's an allegation, not verified financial findings, and viral numbers are not the same thing as audited records. But the reason the claim detonates online is simple. Once people believe the money belongs to the kids, every public appearance turns into a symbolic invoice. A suit becomes receipt core. A plane becomes, why is the children's future boarding first class? And suddenly the story isn't about grief anymore. It's about who's benefiting. And that's when the emotional math changes. Before money, the audience debates tone. Is the schedule too fast? Is the grief too polished? After money, the audience debates morality like it's a jury duty speed run. Grief becomes branding. Sympathy becomes shield. And every camera angle becomes proof of a spending plan. And the internet loves this framing because it's clean. It turns complicated human behavior into a simple villain arc with a price tag. But the twist is, real life is usually more complicated than a TikTok caption. Estates have rules, trusts have structures, spouses have rights, kids have guardians. None of that fits neatly into a meme. Still, the allegation spreads because it feels concrete. And once the audience thinks there's a money trail, they stop asking for explanations and start scanning for the one thing that makes it real: legal pressure, filings, oversight, custody, court action, anything that turns rumor into receipts. And once money is on the table, the internet starts scanning for the only thing that can make it real: legal pressure. This is where the whole saga does that horror movie thing where the background music stops and everybody suddenly hears footsteps. Because the second the narrative introduces the possibility, allegedly according to claims circulating online, that Charlie Kirk's parents might be exploring court action related to custody or oversight, the audience's brain goes, oh, this isn't just YouTube anymore. This is somebody might be printing emails territory. And that matters, because courts are not impressed by viral clips. Courts don't watch body language breakdowns. Courts don't care if a comment section voted 73% shady. Courts want records, receipts, verified timelines, and facts that don't crumble the moment a lawyer says, so where did you get that information? It turns the whole thing from internet jury to adult supervision has arrived. And that's why this beat lands like a hammer. It threatens to replace speculation with structure. Online, everyone argues in vibes. In legal land, vibes get politely escorted out by a bailiff. If anything ever moves past rumor into reality, again, hypothetical framing, not confirmed, then suddenly the discussion becomes about documentable questions. Who has oversight? What financial protections exist? What custody, guardianship arrangements apply? What caregiving looks like day to day? And whether any story being told publicly matches what can be proven privately. And the internet hates that, because a courtroom is the one place where I feel like gets replaced with prove it. That's why viewers read this moment as uh-oh, because once consequences show up, the narrative can't just spin faster. It has to stand still and hold up under light. And once consequences enter the room, the final question becomes simple and brutal. Is this grief use or strategy? So here's where I land on this, without pretending I'm a judge, a jury, or somebody's group chat therapist. Charlie Kirk's death is a real devastating event with a live prosecution and massive national attention. But the internet doesn't process tragedy like a human being. It processes tragedy like a content machine. It zooms in on moments, stop, the quick visibility, the meeting behind closed doors, the parenting claims, the money allegations, and it turns those moments into a storyline that spreads faster than truth can put its shoes on. And Candace Owens is playing the role of the person who refuses to let the room move on until the room answers the uncomfortable questions. While Erika Kirk, in the framing you you shared is trying to shut down speculation and protect family, organization, and legacy from what she sees as destructive narratives. That's why this has gone nuclear, because it's not just about what happened, it's about who gets to control the meaning of what happened and how the public is expected to behave after a tragedy. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think this is Candace doing accountability or Candace doing content? Do you think Erika's visibility reads like strength or strategy? And if you're a parent, does the internet have any business running a vibe audit on someone else's grief? Drop your take in the comments. Keep it respectful, because there are kids involved and this is real life, not a reality show. And if you want the clean timeline updates and the sharp breakdowns without the fluff, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story isn't dying down. It's heading toward the part where receipts matter more than rumors.